A long time ago, I was visiting my grandparents in Portugal. It was Saturday morning, so I decided to check what old cartoons they imported this time. That's when I saw it. A show that was clearly made with Flash, but was light years ahead of any of the cheap stuff that was being aired, especially since Cartoon Network was just getting out of a dark spot at the time. Needless to say, I was floored by the show. The art style was a mix of anime stylization with Western design sensibilities, making for some very strong character designs that were elevated by its excellent animation. That show was Wakfu, an animated adaptation of the MMORPG of the same name. It was produced by the French studio Ankama Animation in 2009, which initially ran for 2 seasons. While there was a 3rd season in 2017, I will only be covering the first 2. This is mainly because that is the span of the original English dub. Speaking of which, goodness, that dub does not do the show justice. Fortunately, the characters managed to shine in spite of the spotty voice acting. Right out of the gate, Hugo is vastly different from the rest of the cast in more than one way. He started out as an orphan who was adopted by an innkeeper. When we're introduced to him, he's just the cook, but we soon realize he's got strange powers that nobody else in the world has. Now here comes the spoiler part. Yeah, we're going to have plenty of spoilers here. He's an alien called an heliotrope. His people were from another planet. It should also be noted that many of their artifacts are the reason for a lot of the conflict in this show, namely the Heliocube and the Heliotrope Dophus. To say the least, he's kind of important. His design is also very solid. The main thing that I love about it is his hat. Not only does it define his silhouette, but it also creates a lot of intrigue, because there is clearly something under that hat. It doesn't get revealed until the end of Season 2. But that's one thing that I would rather not spoil. As for the rest of this design, it's very good. His complementary orange and teal color palette is very easy on the eye, while still giving him an energetic look. Overall, he comes across as a young JRPG hero in a similar vein to Zidane from Final Fantasy IX. As for his characterization, he is without a doubt the heart of the team. Most of the time, he's the one who offers to help others in need. The rest of the time it's Dally, but we'll get to him soon. I really like his bond with the older Rule. They're almost like nephew and uncle. There was also his crush on Amalia, which I totally ship, by the way. Boy, do I hope that pans out in later seasons. Overall, I'd say he's a very good protagonist. His voice actor in the English dub doesn't totally ruin the character, but it's nowhere near as expressive as the French dub.
Super style!
Sir Percival of Sadley Grove, or rather, Dally, is the muscle of the party. His initial design is the male model for the Yop class in the MMO. While Hugo is the child JRPG protagonist, Dally is the classic protagonist. He's brash, foolhardy, and a hapless romantic. For his visual design, yeah, they're definitely going for the shonen hero look. A lot of orange, red, a white tabard that evokes the idea of a knight. Like before, the initial design is a stripped-down version of the game's Yop class, lacking the armored pieces of the design. He does also have other designs, but they are both somewhat tied to his character development. The first of them being his possessed state, which is actually the first form we see him in. You see, he is actually a guardian of a shushu, or possessed weapon, that goes by the name of Rubelax. From time to time, Dally does rely on Rubelax for strength. However, Ruby, as they refer to him, does not respect Dally in the least. This reliance on Rubelax comes to a head when his pride and love for the Kra Evangeline gets the better of him. He challenges the haughty Prince Armand, who also has a thing for Ava. When he starts losing, he lets Rubelax take over. Naturally, the Shushu goes all in, full-on berserker rage. He beats Armand, but Ava steps in to stop it. Rubelex, however, straight up breaks her bow, and by proxy her heart. Realizing what he's done, Dali runs away and has his own arc where he proves himself as Rubelex's master and also gets an even more shonen-looking design. While his character growth is solid, I do have a few issues with him. Mainly that he suffers from what I like to call Dragon Ball syndrome, where his growing power begins to overshadow the rest of the party, culminating in him being revealed as the mortal incarnation of the god Yop in the special episodes that were in between seasons 2 and 3. This culminates with him and Hugo fighting Ogrest of all things, a monster that is almost a force of nature itself that has shaped the world into the way it is now. Thankfully, this is not much of a problem during the first 2 seasons, but I do worry about this trend going forward. The other problem lies within the English dub's voiceover for him. He seems to be hard-locked in this goofball voice. This effectively ruins the prideful side of his personality that the French VA brought to the table. What's more, it makes all of his combat grunts, yells, and other voice work seem rather artificial. It's like he's stuck doing this impression as opposed to properly acting. Though given how the latter seems to be a consistent problem, it may be an issue with the voice direction than any one actor. In any case, Dali is alright when the writers don't make him dumber than rocks, or a Super Saiyan Yop god.
Awesome!
Evangeline, or Ava, as the group calls her, is the party's range combatant and bodyguard to Princess Amalia. Being the iconic Kra, she has, of course, a simplified version of the game's design. Moreover, she draws upon the classic elf marksman archetype, wielding a bow as her primary weapon. As for her palette, she has an analogous combination of browns and yellows, with some desaturated greens in her bow and eyes. This earthy palette also reflects how she functions as a character. She tends to be the one who reigns in the other more wily characters like Rule and Dali. Speaking of Dali, it's been rather hard to not talk about Ava and the Yop Brain's blossoming relationship. While Dali's feelings were pretty evident since day one, Ava's had to be developed over time. Eventually, through their teamwork and shared adversities, they begin to love each other. By the end of the first season, and beginning of the second, Dali sort of dies. Not really. It's kind of weird. This sends Ava into a depressed state until she gets a vision from Dali, telling her that he's alive. She spends the first arc of the second season trying to locate and get him back. She also gets a second, more streamlined design in the process. The dynamic between her and Dali is charming when done well, and the same can be said for Ava herself. I generally have less direct problems with her character than Dali.
Awesome!
Rule Shroud is the experienced adventurer of the group. He's been around, and quite a few episodes revolve around his past, which is very interesting. He's a bit of a miser, but that's part of the territory when it comes to those who venerate Inotroph. But at the end of the day, he cares for the party, especially Hugo, who he considers a family member. Like the others that are based on the game's classes, Rule starts as a very simplified version of the Inotroph class. However, his design starts off a bit more different, having a large jacket over his clothes. Come Season 2, he loses the jacket for an outfit that more accurately resembles his design's origin. As for his English voice, it's serviceable. It doesn't distract from the character too much, but the performance could be better.
Brutal!
Amalia Sharon Charm, the runaway princess of the Sedita Kingdom. While she can be a bit spoiled and bratty given her prior lifestyle, she is ultimately a kind-hearted person, and rather diplomatic when the need arises. The series does spend a lot of time in the Sedita Kingdom. Going from the latter episodes of the first season, we see her relationship with her brother and how she reminds him and their father of her mother who died. Then there is her relationship with Hugo. That unfortunately doesn't get too fleshed out until season 3, so I will hold my peace, because I've only read about that season. Perhaps that's a video for another day. Amalia is another class representation in the show. She has a safe-for-TV version of the game's design, having a shirt that covers her upper torso instead of the leaf bra. Otherwise, she retains a longer version of the leaf skirt and the flower in her hair, definitely fitting with the floral theme that the Sedita people have. She does get a very unique design in the 3rd season, but again, we're only doing 1 and 2. While in some episodes she can be irritating, I found her far more tolerable than Dali.
Awesome!
Adamai is the first new member of the Brotherhood of the Tofu, being the one to dub the party's name. He's Hugo's dragon brother, which sounds very interesting, but come the 2nd season, I can't help but feel he got shafted really hard. Aside from training with Hugo in the latter half of the 1st season, he spends the 2nd season babysitting another dragon, and basically sitting on his tail. When he does finally get some action, the main villain of the season beats him without too much trouble, and has a shushu possess him. He does get some more exposure during the special, which kind of finishes the arc of him and Hugo growing apart, but I really think that having that sort of arc should have happened in Season 2. Adamai's design is a bit better, with him being a cute shape-shifting dragon, and having a powerful stone golem-like super form. Then there's what he gets in Season 3. But since I'm not talking about that, Adamai's score is safe, for now. I think in the end, Adamai is my biggest disappointment in this show. There was so much that could have been done with him, but ultimately, there wasn't. I can only wonder if the writers shafted him because they didn't know what to do with him or how he fit into the group. Because that's what it feels like.
Brutal!
The last big addition to the team was Ava's sister, Cleo. I really wish she was better than what we got, because we got an unnecessary third wheel and a love triangle that barely existed. If you want a character who got shafted harder than Adamai, look no further. After 3 or so episodes, she basically becomes a secondary character rather than an addition to the team. There was a bit of tension between her and her sister, what with her running away from Cross City to become an adventurer and her getting along very well with Dali. The thing is, it never went anywhere and was dropped shortly after a few episodes. Her design is okay. It's more like her sister's old design with a few minor differences. One major difference being that she uses a wrist-mounted crossbow instead of a bow like every other Craw. It just seems like there wasn't enough time for her to really be a part of the team, and she seems like another disappointment. What's worse is that she's functionally the same as her sister in battle. Which is sad because the game does have different builds for the classes too. Talk about a missed opportunity.
Brutal!
Knox is a superb villain. He used to be an inventor named Knox that discovered the Ilia Cube and went insane studying it. His wife left him because he did nothing but obsess over the cube, only to die in a flood. When Knox realized that, he completely lost his grip on sanity. But then, the cube said that it could turn back his life's clock if it has enough Wakfu. He then decides to spend the next few centuries gathering enough Wakfu, only to wind up being able to travel back 20 minutes. Yes, that's right, the bad guy won, but he was so wrong about what he could do that he broke down. He is without a doubt a tragic villain, because if his plan did work, everything would be undone. Unfortunately, the more time he spent gathering, the more Wakfu that would be needed, and there simply wasn't enough Wakfu to pull off time travel on that scale. I really liked how much of a presence he was in the show. Even when he wasn't directly featured in an episode, there would always be these small drones observing the Brotherhood's progress. As for his design, it's spot on. While it has elements of the Zelor class that he's based on, it's modified so that he has his own unique design. He's tall and posing, and given his two lens eyes, he almost seems inhuman, but that couldn't be further from the truth. What's more is that his voice acting is spot on in the English dub. Arthur Bostrom nailed the manic yet cunning personality of the character. Knox really set the bar high in Season 1.
Super style.
Rooshu, however, is the complete opposite of Knox. He is the most stereotypical, destroy everything villain you could ever come up with. His design is functional, but mostly uninteresting, until we see his true form. The problem is that he spends most of the second season sitting on his throne, doing nothing. But this is really because, in the grand scheme of things, he's just a pawn for the real season's villain, Kilby.
Brutal.
I am really torn with Kilby. Sure, he's not as compelling a villain as Knox was, because he spent the vast majority of the season doing barely anything. That said, when he does get his rear in gear, he's quite formidable. Sure, he's not quite the tragic villain in the same way Knox was, but there is an element of tragedy to him. He, like Hugo, is a special heliotrope that is effectively immortal via reincarnation. The twist with Kilby and his sister Shinonome is that they remember all of their incarnations. Tired of his old world, he sought to travel the stars. However, in order to do so, he thought it was a good idea to go to war with the Mechasms, a race of sentient machines. Fortunately, the heliotropes prevailed and went on to the world of 12. Then the Mechasms caught up with them and massacred all of their adults. Save for Kilby, of course, who was tossed into the white dimension because Hugo had it up to here with Kilby being a sociopath. Of course, Kilby does not say that when Hugo released him, instead going on to lie and call himself the king. During this time, I actually liked Kilby since the English voice actor nailed the wise and ancient side of Kilby. Yet when he fuses with the Elia Cube, this facade and the actor's performance break down horribly. Yet I have to say, Kilby's design is excellent in both forms. His injured form is very fitting for somebody trying to pass as a king. He possesses a hat similar to Hugo, but it's far longer, befitting someone of authority. His long hair and braided beard hammer home his age. The warm brown colors on his pants and robes suggest a stable personality, but once he absorbs the cube, his robe tears off, exposing his transformed body. Now a pale and frenzied man with black tattoos and eyes glowing with Wakfu. His mannerisms go from restrained and gentle to exaggerated and manic. In the end, I really like Kilby as a villain. It's just a pity that he wasn't more of a driving force in the second season like Knox was in the first.
Super style.
So, what's my verdict on Wakfu? Well, you should certainly check out the first season on Netflix, and if you really like the characters, give the second season a look. Whatever you do, though, don't watch the English dub. While there are a few good takes, the French dub's performance actually brings life to the characters and are not mixed over the other audio tracks all the time. That'll do it for this episode of Design Dungeon. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. If you have any recommendations, be sure to leave a comment below.